Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. I feel like it's just an incredible, extreme privilege to be chosen to lead this group, particularly while I don't live in Fairfax, I very much feel that Fairfax is my community as well. And I am a lifelong activist and educator, and so this work is also very close to my heart. So I feel like it's an incredible privilege to be here with you and help us all lead our work. Tonight we'll have 3 specific outcomes, and just for everybody to know, this agenda was created in collaboration with our town council members on the ResJ, taking into account the interest and commentary from the community over several months. So I just want to know that this is a collaborative process. This was not me creating an agenda for you. I very much believe that I'm here to facilitate your process, not my own personal agenda. And I just want to make that clear in terms of the content that we'll be going through tonight. So we'll be looking at 3 outcomes. We want to do some team building with each other. You guys have been waiting a long time to be here together. So we want to get to know each other a little bit. For those action-oriented folks that want to skip right to the end, I'll ask for your patience as we take some really meaningful time to get to know each other and understand why we've all come into this virtual room together to serve the town of Fairfax. We want to also build an understanding of the scope of the ResJ work. Some of that scope has been laid out by the town council and the work done in the prior months, but all of you are really going to give life to that scope of work. And so we want to give you some time to do some brainstorming, to share what's on top for you. What are those burning issues that you're bringing to the table that you believe you all need to work through as a community? And then we want to look at any potential action items or items for further development. We will not cover, with the intensity and the excitement and all the buzz, we certainly will not cover every single topic that y'all want to cover tonight, but we do hope to be able to brainstorm some of the issues and get some ideas about how to move forward. How does that sound to everybody?
Sounds great.
All right. I love the real thumbs up. It's so much more satisfying than a virtual thumbs up. Somebody earlier did do snaps, and I really have a habit of that in meetings. So this is kind of like a hey, yeah, all right kind of thing. So if you see me doing snaps, just know that's what it's about. I'm not snapping at anyone. I'm snapping in support and celebration. So Garrett, if you can please go to slide 4. And the one before it, please, on 4. One more back. Perfect, thank you. So our slide show today is not really meant to be a presentation. It's really just meant to be a facilitative guide to some of the agenda items as we work through our content tonight. So can I have a volunteer, and I won't be able to see you all on my screen, so it's going to take me just a minute to choose one, but can I have a volunteer to read the purpose of the ResJ as set forth by the Fairfax Town Council?
I'll read it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
The Racial Equity and Social Justice RegJ Committee will be advisory to the Town Council of Fairfax, California. The committee will focus on actively dismantling and eradicating systemic and individual racism, bigotry, and discrimination within our town in an effort to create a Fairfax that is explicitly anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive in both word and deed.
Thank you, Patrice. And I'm going to take actually just a 20-second pause after reading that statement for us to just marinate on the power of that statement. Thank you so much. Garrett, next slide, please. So what is it that we're being asked to do? What has been set forth by the town council is as follows. And can I have a volunteer to read all the items A, B through C? All right, Veronica, thank you so much.
Or identifying all non-equitable, racist, and/or non-inclusive aspects of our town's function. B, bringing awareness and action to these problems, prioritizing those items that cause the most harm, and finding ways to dismantle problematic policies and structures where necessary. C, identifying key opportunities for growth of and education about anti-racist, equitable, forward-thinking practices and policies within all aspects of Fairfax life.
Thank you so much. And Garrett, next slide. We have one more. All right. And a volunteer to read this last item D, please. And like I said, you just come up 5 at a time, so it takes me a second to get to everybody. One last volunteer. I don't want a cold call. I don't want a cold call.
I'll read it.
Great, Daria, thank you.
Continuing work of the Res J. D, a subcommittee of the Res J committee will be formed to specifically focus on policing within Fairfax. Fairfax has for many years had its own police force and 911 dispatch center charged with community policing. A representative of the Fairfax Police will participate in these discussions, which will be an opportunity to deeply understand how policing operates in our town, for police leadership to listen to the needs of the community it serves, and for policies to be improved where necessary, and to explore alternative public safety models.
Thank you so much. Garrett, can you bring us all back together? This is so exciting to have a driver. Usually I'm trying to navigate it all, and inevitably I make a lot of errors. So thank you so much, Garrett. So I want to just take a minute. How incredibly powerful is the work ahead of us? It's so exciting to be here with all of you to do this work. And I want to just give everybody a minute. I saw snaps. I want to give everybody a minute. We are going to go around. It's going to take some time. We're very thoughtful in sort of our time allocation and the need to balance the work and the team building. So I do want to give everybody an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And you're going to say your name, your relationship to Fairfax. You get to identify what that might be. And what excites you about the work of the Res J. And so I'm going to start us off just as a model for how we're going to go about this. And then you can just raise a hand and I'll start calling on people. So my name is Lisa Jimenez. I used to actually be a resident of Fairfax back in the day, in my much younger years. I think I was there when I was around 19 back on Porteous. So many fun and joyful, hey Porteous, many fun and joyful times I spent in Fairfax in my late teens and early 20s. And as a mom, I have spent almost all of my child's youth on the baseball field in Fairfax, and many friends and loved ones in that town. So I'm very happy to be here in service of your town. And what excites me about the work of the Res J is the intention to transform Fairfax into a more equitable community for all people. And so I'm just excited to be here to help facilitate your process in doing that. And I'm grateful for all of you having me here tonight. So we have a volunteer, and I hope I kept that to about 1 minute. We're trying to give everybody a voice and be mindful of our timeline tonight. So volunteer to go first.
I'll go.
All right.
My name is Patrice Bryant. I've lived in Fairfax for 2.5 years. My father was an officer in the Air Force, so I moved every 3 years of my life. I've lived all over the country and all over the world. And the reason that this committee is so important to me is because, unfortunately, out of all the places I've lived in my lifetime, this has proven to be the most racist for me. And I'd like to change that, because in speaking with friends, they don't they don't understand what racism is. And I think that we have to do a better job of explaining how people are traumatized, people are triggered, people don't feel well in certain environments or certain things being said, and things aren't funny. And that's why I'm here, to show that we can work together and we can collaborate and we can become friends.
Thank you. And can you tell me how to pronounce your name?
Amal.
Thank you.
My name is Amal, and I've grown up in Marin. I've been in Marin my whole life. I've been in Fairfax on and off since I was about 16. And I think I don't know if the word excitement works for me on this topic. I think it's more, I feel urgent about this meeting and this committee, and a bit emotional about this work. A little hesitant too, like just because I think we have such an idea of what Marin is like, open-minded, all these things, and it's going to be very hard work because it's more subtle. Sometimes lesser obvious things are much harder to identify and eradicate. But this is the most segregated county in California, and I just feel like there's so much harm in even things that are not said and not done. And just feel very urgent about this. I think more than excited, I think, just, yeah.
I'll go. I'm Taini Yogi. I've lived in Fairfax for 16 years. I've raised my boys here. But I grew up in New York City. I was born in Uganda. I've lived also all over the world. And I've never experienced, like Patrice, racism like the way I've experienced it here, because it's very subtle for me. And the microaggressions are daily, and many of my friends don't understand them because they're all white and they've never experienced it, and it's really hard. And I want to see Fairfax, like Lisa, I want to try and help us guide to a town that's really equitable and inclusive and understanding. And I hate the word tolerance because I don't think we should tolerate each other. I think we should really be with each other and open. But yeah, I hope that's my wish for Fairfax, is that it's an open, welcoming town for everyone. We can't hear you, Griselda.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrice and Amal and Lisa. I am also not necessarily excited because it feels a little bit scary. One of the questions for me is like, for me personally, it's like, am I up to the task? Because right now, everything feels so heavy and personal and scary. And, so it's very scary. I've been here for 20 years. It'll be 20 years on Thanksgiving that we arrived. And it's a lovely, beautiful place. And I agree with everyone who said that it's, in a way, the hardest racism to address because it's so subtle. And people, when someone yells a racial slur, it's easy to address that. But when somebody looks at you and all they see is a person who is limited by their own by the ideas of the person seeing me, like, oh, you're articulate, you know, I get that all the time, but they're giving me a compliment, you know. So I wonder how we're going to deal with that. That's my question. How do we address that?
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start calling on people. Everyone's being so polite. Okay, great. Serena, thank you.
Hi, my name's Serena Campbell. I'm 19 years old and I've lived in Fairfax my whole entire life. And I would really like to see us like come up with creative solutions, and I would really like to see us implement actual lasting change.
Can go next. My name is Veronica Garretts, and I have lived here for 7 years. And I grew up in Ohio, in a small rural community. And I am most excited about actions related to policy and policing that allow our community to feel safer and more accessible for folks of color.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Daria.
My name is Daria Sievers. I've lived in Fairfax since 2009. I grew up in Mill Valley and lived there for my whole life. I am a clinical and forensic social worker, and so I work with folks who have a lot of opportunity to interact with police and other services in the community. And so I hear often about what works and what doesn't work. And I'm eager to have the opportunity to provide a voice for those folks. And this is a tremendous opportunity to have input and make actual changes. And that to me is what it's all about.
Thank you. Alexandra.
Hi, my name is Alexandra. My family's lived here for 8 years, but I went away to college in Maryland for 4 of those years. And I absolutely love living here. It's kind of like the perfect place in terms of I love going up into the hills and on the trails and spending my weekend riding my bike. But it's when I go into town that then I'm reminded of all of the microaggressions and all of the problems that this beautiful place still has. And so I would love to be a part of kind of maintaining the natural beauty environmentally, but making it so that it's like socially also welcoming for all people. And in addition to that, I think environmental racism is also a thing. So I would love to be a part of that and continue to be able to raise my family here and stay here because I love it a lot.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple last folks. Jump in, jump in.
I'm Stephanie Hellman, and I grew up here. I grew up in Terra Linda. I've lived in Fairfax for 18 years, 19 years. I'm all about driving results and really want to work on several issues related to equity. I guess I really want to meet people where they are. I'm doing a lot of exploration of my own racism, and what I'm
finding in our council meetings is, people come, particularly those, we have regulars who I know have been to our BIPOC listening sessions, and I've heard the trauma, and I've heard the microaggressions, and I've heard, horrific acts of racism in our community and how people don't feel safe. And they continue to make statements like, I've lived here for 30 years and I've never seen any racism. We don't have racism here. We shouldn't be having this community with this committee. And a lot of these people I know and respect, and they're smart, progressive people. And I'd really like to work on some community engagement and help bridge this divide that obviously is across the country. So that's where my heart lies, but I also want to work on housing and and all sorts of things. So I've got a lot of energy, and I feel like I'm here at the right time for this purpose. And I'm really, really honored to be here with all of you.
Thank you. And I don't want to mispronounce your name. You have your hand raised. Yes.
Liesl.
Perfect. Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to mispronounce it. Thank you very much.
It's okay. It's one of those names. So yeah, my name is Liesl. I have lived here for almost 9 years now. Those years rushed by. I'm just going to say that I lived in San Francisco in a rent control department for more than 20 years. I moved to Fairfax. I'm a first-time homeowner at this age. And kind of living here made me a housing activist. And I'm on the town's affordable housing committee. And one of the things that's, the exciting thing about being on this committee is that, I listened to all of the people speak when they applied for this committee. And it was just such an amazing, amazing view into a side of Fairfax that I think has not been heard by a lot of people a lot. So it just made me think, oh my goodness, this town is just more amazing than I ever thought. So that's the exciting part. I'm also a little daunted. I think it might have been Griselda who said, am I up to the task? And I certainly hope so. The other thing that will be both challenging but wonderful is that we're going to be exploring an issue that I feel like since I first moved here, I feel like, ooh, you're not supposed to say that here. And it's always seemed really odd to me. So it's just really groundbreaking that there is a conscious effort to look at and dismantle racism and bigotry here in our town. So I'm very grateful for that, and really hope that I can contribute something positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I think that.
Yes. And can you pronounce your name for me?
Yes, of course. It's Laylee.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I butchered that.
Oh, used to it. It's okay. Anyway, it's a pleasure to meet everybody, and I'm very moved by this tableau in front of me, and in a way it's so representative of what I've been thirsting for on some level since moving here a little over 4 years ago, just before the catastrophic election. But, sort of, there's so many different ways. I'm Iranian. I was there until I was 14. And I could say that, one thing that maybe not differentiates me from some of you is that I think that I realized recently that I never had the expectation of being included or fitting in or feeling at home or rooted, in this country. And I think that my desire to participate in this community is a sign of my affection for this flawed but beautiful town. And my hope that, and which is already, I think, exceeding my expectations, to have met to have met all of you, and that we might be able to do something truly special together. So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. All right, we're down to our last two. Sophia, yes.
Hi, my name's Sophia. I'm 17 and I'm a senior at high school 1327. And I'm probably most excited to, I guess, apart from Serena, be one of the main youth that have recently graduated from the school on the committee, and giving the perspective of the new generation and how they're still, while Gen Z is considered a lot more of a progressive and liberal generation per se, there's definitely a lot of external and internal racism, even in Fairfax, that I think is something that could potentially be addressed that might not otherwise be something that the committee could be aware of.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're last but not least, right, Bruce? Last but not least.
Yes, and I was having internet problems and probably still will, but I'll do my best here. So I'm Bruce Ackerman, and I have been on the council for 3 years, involved with the town for a good while before that, and but have lived all over the country and have traveled a fair amount and worked in other places in the world as well. And when we came to Fairfax, which we did because of my partner going to school here in healthcare, we didn't expect to be here we expected we would be here for 2 years, and then we would probably go to northern New Mexico. But we just fell in love with this place. But definitely upon deciding that this is where we wanted to make our home, if we could, and I felt that it was an odd place. It was kind of a bubble in a way, and that, but at the same time, full of just the most amazing people. And so I just have seen in it, I see the opportunities to do incredible work here on so many levels. I spend a lot of my time thinking about climate, and I see opportunities to be on the leading edge in the nation in thinking about that. But at the same time, again, there's this other side that the footprint of people in this area tends to be very, very large. And so it's just a very interesting and contradictory place to be. But I still love being here. I also, right now, I'm actually north of Fairfax. I'm at our daughter's farm, which is, I guess, partly why I have a poor internet connection, although it's not too good in Fairfax either. But so I'm connected with the rural community and with farming as well. And I'm just honored to have the opportunity to be connected with different communities that I find are all the engineering community, the solar community, the electric vehicle community, the food co-op community, all these different groups that just really are trying to do their best in the world. And everybody is really worried about where the world is going, and trying to step up and do our best. And so I just have a great deal of appreciation for all of you, whom many of whom I'm just meeting tonight in this odd environment, and for just, I just have hope that we can all appreciate each other, and throughout the community that we can appreciate each other, and and find that we are really all on the same side, or at least for the most part, all on the same side. Right now, nationwide, it's hard to say that, but there are certainly a lot of people who are in different walks of life than our own, who are equally passionate about the same things, just coming from a different tiny sliver of the pie.
So much.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make just a historical correction? I misspoke. I've actually lived here since 2003. I lost 6 years there for a minute.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. We'll ask for a little more patience. I know you're anxious to get going on the action, but we want to make sure that we're grounding ourselves in some really important elements to racial equity work. And one of the elements, as we do this work together, it can be a fraught, as we've already seen in the community, as we've seen with our friends, our peers, our colleagues. And so we want to make sure, one, that we're building really strong relationships with each other on this team, so that we can hold this work with positive intent. And very often in racial equity work, underneath the things that we're doing, there's so many different reasons why we're coming to the table to do this work. And often as we're talking and moving through these issues, we are informed by our why, even if we are not conscious of it. And so by lifting up our why for just a moment here tonight together, it gives us an opportunity to really dig deep into our common purpose for being here in this virtual room together. So in the planning of our agenda, we really have to strike a balance with, how much action do we accomplish tonight, and how much of the team building, and really, we call it kind of condition setting for the work to take hold in a really fruitful and positive way. And so having a little bit of time to unpack our common why can be really instrumental in how we work together in the months to come. So I want to just give us a little opportunity to do that. And often there's a quote from Simon Sinek. If you're familiar with any of his work, he's very famous for organizational development, talking about we have to talk about the why of what we're doing before we can get to talking about the how and the what. Because the how and the what are inevitably, whether we acknowledge it or not, they're inevitably informed by the why. And so he says, people like Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, and the Wright brothers had little in common, but they all started with their why. They realized that people won't truly bind to a product, a service, a movement, or an idea until they understand the why behind it. And so, Garrett, if we could go to slide 9, please. Maybe he took a little break.
Garrett.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I literally got a glass of water. So you want the slides back?
Of course, it's like the 1 second in 30 minutes that I called your name. Right?
Yeah, I'm really sorry because you were talking. I had on speaker, and then I was doing the water. And I'm like,
it's no problem at all. It's good to know other people are human when you're doing your Zoom facilitation. It's just a great moment to know other people are human. Can you go to slide 9 for me, please? So as your facilitator, I thought you all should know who you're getting, right? Like some of you know me very, very well, and I'm sure some of you out there in the community know me very well, and others of you don't know me at all and are probably wondering, like, where did she come from, and who is this person that showed up to facilitate the Fairfax Res J? So I grew up in Point Reyes. And at the time, it was this little random town that nobody ever knew about. And I had friends in the East Bay would be like, wait, what, where do you live? Now it's, as everybody knows, it's very well known for bovine pastries and many other delights. But that's really where I got my roots in community organizing. And at the time, I really truly did not understand what was happening in my community as a racial justice issue. I understood that it was like a fairness issue. I was a teenager and I was seeing things in our community, and I am outspoken, always have been, and was like, wait, what, this isn't fair. Why is this happening? We should change it. It's just simply not fair. And it really wasn't, you know, fast forward many, many years, it really wasn't until later that I understood the roots of what I was seeing as unfair, as racist, oppressive, classist, sexist, etc. But really, I had to take a long time, much later as an adult, where I really reflected that my very first steps at organizing and community engagement were really in my little hometown of Point Reyes. That led me into a career of education, and I certainly will keep this brief, but it's really worth noting. I've been a social justice educator and activist really since my teen years, so we're talking 30 years now, and have deep, deep, deep experience. Certainly in the last decade, I've been in educational management, which is really around moving and developing the people in educational organizations. And my entire focus has really been around racial justice and social justice issues within organizations. And so really, that's where I've developed my equity lens and where I've developed my equity work and my social justice work. I started in Marin County in San Rafael as a bilingual teacher, but the majority of my work the last decade has been in the East Bay, in Oakland, and then Richmond, West Contra Costa. I've worked with many, many leaders in the Bay Area equity field, notable facilitators and organizations that have deep, deep, long histories in this work. My purpose, my real single purpose, and the thread that ties all my work together, whether it's community work here, whether it's work that I get paid for, you know, in my education experience, is to eradicate injustice. And I want to strive and work toward the liberation of all people. And I believe we do that by dismantling racist, oppressive systems, who also happen to be classist and sexist. So tonight with all of you, I bring a real wealth of knowledge about how to engage in equity work, the nuances and the intricacies of what it means to do that work. But I say that also with great humility, because it does not matter how long we have been doing this work, we're always learners in the work. And I strive to be continually learning and growing and interrupting my own racist practices, and to strive towards continuous growth of being not only an anti-racist educator, but an anti-racist community member. On a personal note, having raised bilingual kids and had a bilingual family, I won't, of course, go into long stories about my experience here locally, but we have experienced many racist incidents, and my kids have experienced many racist incidents, as has my entire family and my husband, who was an immigrant from Mexico. So it is not only near and dear to my values and beliefs, but it is near and dear to my heart as a community member, and as a mother, still raising my children, even though they're older. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that of you. I am mixed race. I've had to work both to understand my privilege and also to really embrace my Latinx heritage. So I'm happy to be here with you all, and help support your development of this team. Thank you so much. And we'll go to the next slide, slide 10. So we're gonna just take hopefully just about 15 minutes, and we're gonna listen to a really short video. And we want, as you're listening, to really, beyond kind of your experience in Fairfax, digging in deep to why are you here? Like, why did you decide to come to Fairfax ResJ, to interview, to sign up, and to engage in what will undoubtedly be very powerful, but also very challenging work? And so as you listen to this video, I'd like you all to really be engaging in your own reflection about your why. And then due to time, what we'll do is instead of going around each person, we'll just engage in a group discussion for the remainder of this time period on the agenda. And so Garrett, if you could click on the listen bullet and click on Michael Jr. And then we'll cross our fingers that Zoom virtual world cooperates with me. No. Can you try it? Try it one more time. If you double click, you should be able to open a link. Garrett?
Yep.
Okay. Do you see a link when you double click on Michael Jr.?
So I go back, escape out of
Yeah.
this? Okay.
Just go back to listen and click on Michael Jr., do a double click and see if that'll open. It's a YouTube video.
Okay.
It should be
So-
queued up not to have any ads. I apologize in advance if this
Oh,
is
okay.
hard.
So, all right, all right. Oh, you know what? Let me stop the screen share and let me go back to it. Try it again. Okay, so Michael Jr., I clicked on it
Let's
twice.
see if you can click on that YouTube link.
This it?
When you click over Michael Jr., you'll see a little YouTube link that needs
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, you know what? Sorry. Are you not seeing the video that I'm seeing?
No.
Oh, I need to share it. Okay, I got it. Sorry. I thought automatically you saw it. I'm like watching it going,
Oh, no.
uh-oh, my bad. Okay.
And then if it's already started, if you'll just take it, it doesn't have to go all the way back to the beginning, just right after the ads.
Okay.
I had it all queued up. We'll see
Trying to, it's funny. Okay, give me a sec.
Okay,
Let's
no
see.
problem.
It's, all right.
That was great. We could see that.
Here we go. This one?
Yeah, and then if you'll just bring it back to the beginning, perfect.
Okay.
And then expand your screen and that should work.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And the volume, we'll have to do the volume on.
You might have to select to share the volume as well when you go to share screen, Garrett.
Okay.
We're not
So you
hearing.
can't, oh, you can't hear it. All right.
Yeah, we're not
Let's see.
anything on our end. At the bottom of
gotcha.
the video, there's a button.
Oh, there.
Should have a.
Nope.
Nope.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's see.
Yep, there you go.
You might have to go back to screen share it with us, and then there's a
Okay.
spot to click right next to share your screen. It's share your audio as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Veronica.
How about this time? Can you hear it now?
I can't hear
it.
the audio.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't,
Okay.
let's see.
We
Let
can
me
roll with it.
try.
Doesn't work.
Huh. Is there a different button to share the volume?
I think when you share it, there's different instructions for video.
When you press share screen, it's gonna say at the bottom of it, the like kind of pop-up window that it gives.
Oh, share
there'll be a
computer
little bit of
sound.
a- right.
Sorry, you're right. Okay, here we go. I got it.
Clock. We drop a new episode
How about
on
now?
YouTube of Michael.
Perfect. Now if you'll just bring it back. Yep.
Okay, that's my bad. Thank you.
All good. It's all good.
Okay.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know? They always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people
work?
know that I do comedy.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is created by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I see.
Okay, here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
Perfect. Thank you, Garrett. So regardless of the choice of song, no intention to perpetuate any ideology, but just a simple example of what happens when we walk in purpose. And when I heard all of your interviews, nobody is here today by accident. And so we really felt like it was important to take a moment to give folks an opportunity to talk about your why. Some of you mentioned a little bit about it as you were doing your introductions, but this really speaks to your deeper core purpose. And as we work through the ResJ work together, this will consciously or subconsciously be informing how you come to the table to do this work. What are just open dialogue? What are people's thoughts about this? And we'll take, just trying to catch up a little on agenda timing. So we'll take about 10 minutes for this.
I'll go first here with the why. I moved here from San Francisco, having lived there for 15 years. And I think the why that I'm on this committee is, why should I stay here? Fairfax has a 0% Black population. And yes, I have a lot of dear friends who I've made here, but they tell me I am racist. I don't even know what racism is. And I think of leaving all the time. because I want to spend the rest of my life, just like I did the beginning of my life, in diverse communities. And this is the first community I've lived in that's not diverse and is so inherently racist that people don't even know what racism is. So the why I'm here is A, so that I can stay and be in a place where I feel I'm accepted. And the other part of my why is trying to reach one, teach one.
Thank you for that. Other thoughts?
And go.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Did somebody else go?
No, I was just making sure I saw your hand.
Kind of a many layered why. I think my whole life, the issue of Black safety and African Americans enduring the kind of racism and injustices that are present everywhere, every day, has affected me deeply since I was very young. I was aware of it from the time, I would say, predominantly middle school, early middle school, and just deeply affected by it and emotionally affected by it. And the closest people in my life, all through my life, were directly impacted by it, which was just incredibly painful to witness, incredibly painful to see, and to, it's just been something that has been dear to me my whole life and very upsetting to me. And growing up not understanding, I didn't really have any guidance in how to handle it. So not understanding how you can be up against something. So I didn't understand also the importance of local work. So to me, it felt like the government and the powers that be were so distant. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that you start in a more close up approach. So that would be number one for me. And then as I got older, I'm Muslim, and I married a Palestinian man, large, dark brown Muslim Palestinian man. And I covered my hair for years out of a deep love of my faith, and had an experience that gave me a glimpse of a life experience I can't fathom. I was approached by a large group of white, very hateful, shaved heads, about, I can't even say how many, a large group in the woods, in Roy's Redwoods, when I had my two very small children, and they had a dog, and I was threatened and berated for a very long time. I don't know how many minutes. And I just stood there, I didn't want to move because I didn't want to activate any action. And I had my children, and I got out, and etc. And I ended up being asked very passionately by my family not to cover my hair anymore. But that experience of being a target for a moment of my life, and that feeling like if you move, you could lose everything. And then that experience of removing the cloth and settling into my white privilege and being suddenly safe just impacted my life greatly. How serious that is, how serious. So, and then, yeah, I mean, in Fairfax, my car windows were all smashed because I had a Free Palestine sticker. If I say my children's names and people say, where are they from? And I say, we're Muslim, it's just silence, stone face, like just no response. Things like that. And that, honestly, like, I can flow with all of that. And I am white. So if I don't want to address it, I can slip into just, my husband can't, but nor can one of my children. The other one, you would never know. He looks very white. But yeah, I just can't fathom the trauma of not being able to rest from being a possible target. I cannot imagine that. Those like 15 minutes affect, like the trauma, it affected me so deeply. I can't even imagine. And so to me, this is just very urgent. And microaggressions piled up, I feel like, are as traumatic as one very aggressive experience. So, and I think microaggressions can just be excluded from having access to communities, from building wealth, from having access to resources that everybody else has. So sorry if that was too long.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'd like us actually to, I'd just like to call a pause to bear witness to that story. If we could just take a pause of recognition, please. Thank you. We have about 3 more minutes. Anyone else like to share? Yes, Veronica.
Thanks, Amal. My son, who's 9, is the largest Y that I have. He is biracial, Sierra Leonean American, light-skinned, but has begun to identify himself as Black. And feel certainly like the fear, as Patrice mentioned, you know, why should I stay here? Do I want to stay here? So there's times where I question my decision to continue to raise him in Fairfax. And want to do everything that I can to create a community that really lifts him up, and where I don't feel scared about how he'll be engaged with if he breaks the law in ways that sometimes young boys do, or young women do, young kids do. And that's a huge why. And then that filters out to just the Black community in general. So certainly wanting racial equity and justice for all folks, and firmly believe that when we get to the place where Black folks feel safe in a community, everybody feels safe in that community.
Thank you.
I know I've already spoken, but I just need to put this out there because it's something that happened to me here in Fairfax. And I think everyone should know about it, but someone put a dead crow on my doorstep. I have lived in Georgia. I have lived in Florida. I have lived in Kansas. I have lived all over the world, and I have never experienced the agita that I had when I came home that day and there was a dead crow on my doorstep that had obviously been put there for racial reasons. And so I just feel like there is so much work to be done here from a racial perspective. And I hear ya. If I had a Black child, I think I would move tomorrow. However, I live on a street, as Daria and Lisa know, because we all live within blocks of each other. We have a lot of young children. They are fantastic, but none of them are racial minorities. And so their life is easy. And I feel like my job is explaining to them how they can help others. And I think that the purpose of this committee is to ensure that the generation coming behind us is aware of that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. It's really often our stories that bind us together in our humanity. So thank you so much for sharing. Part of my role as facilitator is always to manage a delicate balance of giving everybody voice and also keeping us moving along so we aren't here until 1 in the morning. So I would like to ask, yeah, right, Liesel's like, whoa. So I would like to ask our team's permission to move us on into the rest of the agenda, but I don't want to do that if somebody just feels terribly urgent to share a story. Griselda, I think you're muted.
I don't need to share a story. I just want to acknowledge the stories that were told, and I just want to briefly say that my why is because I feel we lose so much. Each of us lose so much when we're in our own little worlds, and I really feel the world loses a lot when they lose me, when they don't see me. You know, I'm a wonderful person. Everybody's wonderful. And so my why is because I want more happiness in the world and less suffering. And I don't want to lose out on the beauty of Patrice and the beauty of Amal and the beauty of everyone. I want to see everyone, and I want everyone to see me. And that's my why.
Can I just quickly piggyback on Griselda? Because that's what I was going to say, is my why is this group of people. Because I've lived here for 16 years and I have never had this group of people. And like, I'm getting goosebumps. And for me, this is like, where have you all been my whole life here in Fairfax? Why haven't we been together for longer than this Res J committee? And so I am, you are all my why. And so I thank you.
Thank you so much for everything you shared. We are going to move on via consensus. So can I just get a thumbs up if you're okay with moving on now? I don't want to dishonor any stories. And Serena, I can't see your thumb. Thank you. Some of them are blocked from your names. So thank you so much for the stories you shared. Deep appreciation for all of your stories. All right. Garrett, are you there with us?
Yes, share the screen, or?
Yes, please, to slide.
Okay, that's what I was going to. There you go.
Slide 11. Oh my gosh, it's so fabulous to have a driver. I'm so appreciative. All right, so one thing that we want to do at our retreat is to take a much longer time to build consensus around norms for our meetings, and actually go through a process where every single person can really talk about what they need for our meetings to feel safe and purposeful and productive for them. But in the interest of this being our first meeting and not having a retreat space or an extended meeting time, I wanted to ask people's permission if I could offer these norms to you, and then we could discuss any that may not be a fit, or we could add any that you feel are a burning issue. And then when we have more time, we'll create a collaborative set of norms. Does that, and I can't see everybody at the same time on the screen. So does that work for everybody? And you'll have to speak up with your voice if it does not work. Because when I have to kind of scroll through pictures to see everybody.
It works for me. I typically like to take a little bit of time to think about norms and add articulate bullets to them. So I'm reading what you have here, and millions of thoughts are going through my head about what I would add and what I would get rid of. So it's kind of hard. I mean, we're talking about race here. It's a artificial construct. And so I think that we should be given a little more time. This isn't just an off the cuff question. It's deep.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And so I'm happy to honor that time. What our hesitation was, I think in the interest of what you're saying, I'm in 100% agreement as a facilitator, a very robust, thoughtful norm process really at minimum takes 2 hours, if not 3 hours, really to come to consensus on norms. And that simply wasn't possible in this meeting. So I'm wondering if I could speak to the bullets, and as a possible kind of way through this, if people are comfortable having a discussion around the bullets today, and we could add any significant norms you feel missing or eliminate anything. This is simply an offering. So I'm definitely not trying to impose norms as a facilitator. I was simply trying to offer a way forward for this one meeting. Does that work for people as a way to move forward, that I could go through the bullets and then we could have a short discussion? And what I'm going to do is scroll. If you will hold your thumb up so I can see it as I scroll, if that process works for you. So I have Serena and Patrice, Veronica, Teu, Stephanie, Daria, thank you. Okay, Alexandra's next. Layli, Liesel, Griselda, and Amal. Sophia, I cannot see you.
I don't know where my thumbs up button went, but I thumbs up.
Okay, great. So I definitely want a collaborative, co-constructed norm process. And I'm very, very appreciative, Patrice, of you speaking your truth and stopping the process to make sure that we spent time on this. So I just shout out and a thank you for that. It's so important. So I'll go through the bullets and then we can have an open discussion. And these are typical, I chose these norms from equity work. So these are norms that often show up in equity work. So one significant norm is to share the airtime. And does anyone want to, I can define what that means, but I'd rather hear from all of you. Does anyone want to define what that means? This is pretty familiar.
I talk too much, so I'm going to talk again. I think that sharing the airtime means me shutting up and allowing everyone to speak.
So share the airtime is definitely having self-awareness and making sure as an equitable meeting that every single person in our meeting has voice and has an opportunity to share, has the opportunity to have their voice heard. And so some of that, we also use the phrase connected to airtime, step up, step back. And so making sure that you're being self-aware, that you're offering airtime to others, but we also want to build trust with each other, that if somebody feels like a member's taking up too much airtime, that we can have open, safe communication to ensure all voices. It also means encouraging folks to speak up. So if there's folks on our team that have not spoken, that we haven't heard from, I'll try to ensure I do that as a facilitator, but I miss things. So I also encouraging our team, our ResJ, to do that for each other and invite folks into the conversation. We do have stylistic differences, something else that we'll go into deeper at our retreat, just in terms of, the need to process information verbally, the need, just different styles that we might have in our participation. And so it's both honoring and respecting each other's style. If you're somebody who doesn't speak up as much, that's fine. But also making space for all those styles to exist together here safely in the space. Step up, step back is defined very differently in different communities. Does anybody want to offer a thought about this before I just speak from my experience with this concept?
Well, I'll just say what it looks like to me is, speak up, step up, come to the table, say what's on your mind, and then step back and take in what happens next.
That's it's a great summary. Yes, knowing when you really need to move forward and advocate, and knowing when, things like speaking your truth, but also knowing when it might be time for you to show some humility, and take a step back and be a learner in the process. This often shows up in spaces of privilege, to be quite frank, where we'll have a white privilege show up in the form of domination of conversations, domination of thought and ideas, domination of the direction and agenda for meetings. So we want to just make sure to be cognizant of that. Really, it starts with ourselves in a meeting. How are we holding these norms? But when we get to roles in the next slide, we'll talk about having a process observer, and the process observer has an intent of holding norms for equity spaces. So constructivist listening, are folks familiar with that concept? And again, I'm kind of just scrolling through pictures. I see some nods. Does any different, somebody who hasn't spoken want to speak to that? Okay. Oh, was somebody going to unmute? I thought I saw a move. Stephanie, was that you?
I had an itch.
Oh. It's much more interesting to hear from all of you than hear from me. Do you want to speak to this?
I haven't actually heard of that term, but I could guess what it is. But no, you go ahead in the interest of time.
Okay. So this is really when we are showing up as authentic learners, and listeners for each other. And so many times I share some, I'm a verbal processor. And so Patrice, what you said resonates with me, where, I'm a talker and I want to kind of talk about information and unpack information. But one of the most important things that we can do, and it's a foundational aspect of racial justice and equity work, is to practice listening to others. And that means listening to hear and understand others. And so oftentimes, I'm sure you've experienced in your, at home, in your community, in your relationships, we're listening, but we're got our brain cells are firing to respond, and the next great idea and the next comment or rebuttal or argument, or I could go on and on. So constructivist listening is really asking us to show up as authentic, engaged listeners, to really deeply hear each other. Hear each other's life experience, hear each other's stories, hear how each of us are coming into this space to do this work. And it means I'm setting aside some of my thoughts and my opinions and the running dialogue in my head and the rebuttal argument, to really show up authentically, to hear your story in its purest, truest sense of the form. This is another important one, ask, don't assume. So as we get into the nitty gritty of how to move our mini objectives from this ResJ forward, people have already mentioned, we don't share each other's stories. And many folks in the community don't understand the experiences that have been mentioned here tonight, and may not have any experience with some of those stories. And so this is a really important, it's connected to intent versus impact. It's a really important, it's a stance that we use to ensure that we aren't making any assumptions based on our own bias, based on our own privilege, based on our own culture, religion, racial, sexual, gender identities, that we're really asking our friends here on the ResJ and in our community before we assume different things based on our own personal lens and life experience. They're all intimately connected and really grounded in the idea of humble inquiry. And so that really just is a simple thought of humility, that we do not know each other's stories and life experience, and that we take a stance of humility that my experience is no better or worse than anyone else's experience, and that my experience is my truth. And my experience and my truth may not be yours, but that truth is my personal truth, and that we're coming from a stance of humility as we inquire to other people's truth, right? That no one else's truth is going to be imposed on me. Oh, Lisa, that didn't happen. Oh, Lisa, that's not so bad. Oh, Lisa, you're not this, or where are you from? Or, all the things that some of you actually have already mentioned tonight. Questions, thoughts, any additions or takeaways? And it's just for tonight, not a permanent, no permanent.
I was going to say, I think it's a great practice in daily life.
Yeah.
If I could abide by these more frequently, I think it would make a difference.
Daria, as your neighbor, I have to say that you actually do.
My hope is, Facilitator, that actually good meetings make us good humans, because we get to build relationships with each other. So I'm happy to hear that. Any other thoughts? And just speak out, because I can't see everybody at the same time.
I talk too much, and you guys are going to have to tell me to shut up, and you have free will to do so. But as an African American, I feel like ask, don't assume means don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, I went to prestigious college in New England. My father was an officer in the Air Force who did 23 years and then ended up running his division for the next 23 as a government civilian. And people look at me because of the color of my skin and make very different assumptions about who I am. So when I look at ask, don't assume, I think get to know someone. Don't let your unconscious bias lead you to believe that you know who this person is. Ask questions.
Thank you. Anything that we need to add, people feel urgent, that is urgent about, and that is not included here?
I want to add one thing, because this is something that has been stuck in my craw since I had to look it up. As an African American who had to look up BIPOC to figure out what it meant, it feels like Negro to me. Every time I hear the word said, I feel less than. I feel like I'm not a human, I'm a category. So if we could move away from using the term BIPOC and maybe call each other by names, or as neighbors, or as friends, but that is something that really, really bothers me and kind of runs against everything we've talked about thus far. I am not BIPOC. I am Patrice.
Okay, thank you for that. Garrett, you're working off a PDF, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So can we take note of that?
Yes.
Can everyone take note of that? And if you could please write that down as a note so we can bring that back to the next one, and we'll hold that norm with us tonight as well. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we okay to move on? What's up? Okay. All right, next slide, please. So we'll, again, much of this will go into deeper at our retreat, but we will be taking, Stephanie, I believe you had a special name for the kinds of minutes we're taking, and I'm forgetting it right now.
Oh, action items, action minutes.
Yeah, action minutes. Thank you. Or Garrett had the name and I forgot. So we do have someone taking action minutes. It's not literal play-by-play minutes, but it's a synthesis of the main topics, ideas, and thoughts being shared tonight. That would be considered our note taker. And in other circumstances, we would have a timekeeper. I'm kind of holding that just for simplicity's sake tonight. My goal is to have shared facilitation. Y'all don't need to hear from me all night long for 2 or 3 hours. So as we work together, we'll be building in other facilitator roles for all of you to hold. And then one that might be new to you, but that's really critical as we move into this work together is a process observer. Is there anyone who's had experience with a process observer before?
Can you define process observer? There are just so many different terms used.
Yeah, I know it's all a lot of new. So a process observer in its simplest form, and again, we'll go into that deeper another night, is somebody who in this case, really, it's the equitable process of a meeting. So somebody would be called in the beginning of the meeting, and we can practice it tonight if you're willing. In its simplest form, did we hold our norms? And so at the end of the meeting, we'll have a moment of reflection about whether or not we held our norms. And the idea is it's a shared role. So we actually build in some equitable practice by sharing the lens of process observer throughout the meeting. So, you know, Daria's experience in a meeting may not be Patrice's experience in a meeting. And so it's really important to be sharing these roles and sharing these lenses that we look at our meeting. So for tonight, I'll keep it super simple. In the future, we can actually, typically I do it with a recording, a document that records it that everybody can really see and sink their teeth into. But for tonight, I'd like to keep it simple. And we could hold a process observer for our norms. And at the end of the meeting, the process observer would take just 2-3 quick minutes to check in. Yes, we held our norms. No, we didn't. Here were some sticking places and growth opportunities. This is sort of nuts and bolts of
that's keeping us accountable to what we agreed on.
Yeah, and it's specifically, we would develop a process observation together as a team. And it generally specifically has very particular equity elements that are held within that process observation. And tonight we'll just try it on. Well, you know, there's no right or wrong here. Does anyone want to volunteer to do that tonight? Just do a check-in at the end about our norms. And you'll have to speak up because I can't see hands this way.
I'll volunteer next meeting.
Okay. All right. Garrett.
It looks like I saw Veronica raise her hand.
How are you just on the screen with her?
Sí, señorita. Yeah, I'm happy to be the process observer for the evening.
Perfect.
Thanks, Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you for being willing to try something new out. All right, next slide, please. So this is just a quick note, kind of what I'm down and here to do as facilitator. So agendas are created collaboratively. This is not my agenda for ResJ. I definitely have content to share and to bring in regards to the equity work and team development work. But the content of how you're going to do your work as a ResJ is going to be developed and co-constructed collaboratively. So I just really want to make that point. I'm here to help you move through the different phases of a meeting. And specifically, I'm here to support equity-centered development. I come from kind of a liberatory design space of how to hold and run equitable spaces in meetings. I also really want to make note around my model of facilitation as a gradual release model. So I'm actually not a fan of professional facilitators holding the team. I think it's really important for team members to hold your work together. So my hope is that actually, as I facilitate most of the meeting tonight, over time, I'm going to be building your capacity to facilitate the meetings and hold the work. And my role is going to go down and the role of the team holding the work is going to go up. I'm kind of gradually releasing everybody into responsibility for team development. And then I'm going to take a more backseat support role. And that's a very intentional and purposeful model to really place you all are community leaders. And in terms of grassroots organizing and grassroots community development, it's really placing the ownership of your meeting and your space and your equity work in the hands of the community. So I just want to make specific note of that. And then in terms of capacity building, part of the decision around having a facilitator is that racial justice work is incredibly amazing, but also challenging. And so there is some equity muscle. We're all coming into this work, I think, from, the spectrum of no experience or limited to a lot of experience. And we want to make sure that we have some common language, some common understanding about what we're here to do and how to do that work. So some of my role will be to build capacity around racial equity work, but also build capacity around, how are we building a high performing team, so that when I'm long gone, y'all can carry the torch long into the future. And then we're going to go next slide. We can skip that one, next one. So just pointing out here kind of the 3 work streams. These are going to be happening kind of interwoven development. In order to do the Res J work, when you think all the way back to the purpose and the goals, that's very heavy, very complex, very challenging work. And so we want to make sure that we're learning and leaning into the racial equity part of that work. What does it mean to work for equity? And what does it mean to hold racial equity in the forefront of how you do your work? But we also want to make sure that we're building a high performing team to do that work. And I see a hand. Nope, an itch again. Someone's moving around. Okay. All right. And then we're going to do, we're going to have one last slide. And Garrett, if you could skip to slide 18. So just a note here, and this can get further defined for the team, but for this initial meeting, this is just a very important concept in our racial equity work. And I want to read a quote from Audre Lorde. "There is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." And so we're clearly not going to dig into the slide tonight, but I actually chose one that really represents the complexity of the notion of intersectionality. And this idea is that none of us we're not just dealing with racial equity. I as a woman am not just dealing with gender issues. That I as a mixed race woman, I'm dealing with and have class privilege. I'm dealing with the intersection of multiple issues every day, all the time. And so that many of us, as we're talking about racial justice, we really want to take note and notice that these issues have intersectional elements and that we can't exclude, while we're maybe focusing on one element, we cannot exclude the multiple intersecting elements that come up in the work and frankly are part of our lived experience here in Fairfax. Any comments or questions about this? All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us on then. So we get to dig in a little bit. I think I just want to make a quick decision here. Let's go to slide 21, and then we're going to dig into our brainstorm. So we wanted to give you, again, I won't spend very long on this slide, but I wanted to give folks an idea when Stephanie and Bruce and I were planning this, kind of what are we here to do? What are we about to try out and accomplish together? And so this is just to give you a general sense. This is going to be cyclical. In a couple minutes, you all will engage in a brainstorm as we get into the nitty-gritty of the meeting. And there's going to be some issues that you're going to want to take action on right away. And so you're going to move very quickly from understanding the issue to planning to acting on the issue. And there's going to be other issues where you're really going to need to take time. You're going to need to understand it. You're going to need to collect some data. You're going to need to reflect on the issue, perhaps create a plan and revise the plan. So depending on where you go with the issues, the kind of phases of development of the ResJ, it's kind of like, what are we setting out to do together? You all will decide the content, but this is just a very generic idea of kind of how we're going to move through some of those pieces of work as we start to fine tune and narrow down what the scope of work will be. Stephanie or Bruce, did you want to add anything here? I don't know if Bruce is still with us. No.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, I think he is having issues at the moment. He dropped. But so we're doing some brainstorming on this evening, but we'll go deeper and more detailed in the retreat, I would imagine.
Yes. And this will really, I mean, my role is to lay out kind of a direction, but this work is to be created by all of you. So just as we move forward, part of really high functioning teams is also understanding our roles respective to each other. So I'm not going to be telling you what to do and where to go. What I hope to do is to facilitate the conversation, the dialogue, the process to get you there. So that's why this was intentionally left kind of as a more global view of a possible path forward, but the development has to come from the Fairfax community, not your facilitator. So I just want to point that out for those. I'm usually sitting in meetings like this, really like, wait, what about the community? What do they get to say? So it's always important to me to point out where I step up and step back in these meetings. So questions, quick thoughts?
You mean, are you ready to delve into it? Is that what you?
I'm ready to rock on the next one's brainstorm, which I know is what everyone's been waiting for, but I want to make sure before I move on that we're good as a team. Okay, I'm going to take a silence as a.
I'm good. I understand the stages presented here.
Okay, so if we can go to the next slide, please. Actually, slide 26, sorry. All right. So we want to dig in, and this is just open dialogue format. Now that we've set some ground, built some relationship, set some groundwork, remembering our norms for the night, we want to just dig in, and we're going to do the first part in a two-part format. I want to give all of you a couple of minutes to just gather your thoughts. Literally, I will give you 2 minutes, and you're just going to write down on a paper or wherever you're sitting in your house. One of the things that we want to do right now is really just surface all of the many issues that we're coming to this meeting with, that we're bringing to the table. And then part of our work as a team, and Garrett, you can actually, let's see, we don't have a chat box, huh? So if people feel a need to save this slide, you could take a picture. I'll refer and I'll lead us through the conversation with the questions, but I want to get out of the screen so we can all be together. So Garrett, can you transition us back to the group? Perfect. Thank you. Ooh, we had some music too. Hey. All right, so I'm going to time you. We're going to take 2 minutes, and you're just going to brainstorm, brain dump all of the things that are coming up for you that you feel like are the most salient issues pressing in the community of Fairfax as a representative of that community. And then when you're finished, we'll come back together, and we are going to do a whip around. This is purposeful and intentional for equity of voice. Everybody will have a chance. I'd like to keep it to 2 minutes if possible, but out of respect for your voice, if it needs to go a little bit longer, we can manage it. So I'm going to put on an actual official timer, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes.
Lisa, are we just addressing the first question?
Yes. So what are the most salient issues pressing the town of Fairfax right now from your perspective?
Lisa, just so you know, Bruce can't get back on either by internet or phone.
Okay, thank you. We'll miss him. Okay, so that was time. If you need another minute, you can just show me a 1 minute finger and I can add some time. You're good? Okay. And I try to catch everybody and scan the screen, but please shout at me if I miss you ever. Okay, it's not intentional. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at your list and you are gonna star the 3 most urgent items that you feel need the most urgent attention by this committee.
Wait, what?
So of the, no, that's exactly what I need to hear. It's so much harder to read people virtually. Star the 3 issues you feel are most pressing.
On our piece of paper we wrote?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like interactively somewhere.
Oh, no. This is all still just you doing a little bit of thinking work. Yeah. It's a new Zoom feature. You didn't know? All right. And then when you've started those, the next is going to be to draw a square, a triangle, whatever your preference, around 3 issues that you feel you really need to more deeply understand. Like gather data, talk to people. Okay, and then the last will be to a different shape, square or triangle, circle, whatever you did not choose. Issues that are important, clearly, but are not urgent. They need to be addressed, but perhaps not right away. You know, just about 30 more seconds to finish that up. Okay. So the goal of this time, with everybody taking about 2 minutes, we're almost at 24, I believe, with Bruce gone minutes. So the goal is that you share whatever you feel is important to share with the group. But at the end, what we really want to do is be able to have some idea as a team. What are the most what are you hearing each other say? This is your work. So I'm not directing what's important, what's not important. But by the end, you really do want to surface some of the most important items that you're going to want to start working on first. You will not be able to do it all, and you are going to have it's predictable that in this work, you're going to have competing needs. And so part of our work will be to be building consensus and thought about how you're going to move forward as a team and how you're going to choose what you work on. Serena.
Sorry, just a clarifying question. So we're just reading the 3 things we start, or?
I don't want to micromanage how you share. So from what you just did, whatever you feel like is important to share in your 2 minutes.
Okay, got it.
It's just open sharing. Yeah. It's a little
I guess
easier.
I can go first if.
Yeah, but why don't we go ahead and start? That's great. I'm going to put a timer on, but if I want to be respectful of people's voice, so I'm going to try to move us through with the timer. If your time is called and you feel like it's just, you cannot let go of the last idea, I'm happy to respect that and have you finish.
I'm probably not going to need 2 minutes because I think my ideas are kind of broad. But the main things that I thought were like incredibly important, we're trying to solve or like raise awareness for or not solve, but raise awareness for like microaggressions and kind of what they are, and how to kind of be more aware of what you're saying when you're saying it. And something I wouldn't really necessarily know the solution to beyond creating a better sense of community and better housing is the lack of diversity. And that's like a county-wide thing, obviously. And then something that personally is really important to me is racism in schools, and specifically the lack of diversity within positions of power in schools. And by that I mean like teachers and administrators, because if you kind of grow up never having someone, I don't want to say like in charge of you, right? But if you grow up never kind of listening to a person of color, why would you value their opinion? And then something else that I kind of like really thought was important was just the lack of awareness of correct history, and what racism is. Like a lot of people have brought that up. And specifically, I'd really like to kind of bring awareness to the racism that, or I guess bigotry too, that immigrants experience, and the lack of understanding, like from like, you know, I guess, of why people immigrate and what has caused the root problems for immigration, because it's the US. So that's something to really think about. And then a kind of big thing that I did put, like, the kind of maybe not a important right now issue, but like the town's name. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, next person.
I'll go.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
My thinking brain is a little on vacation from 3 nights of lack of sleep out of worry. But what comes up for me more is the invisibility of the immigrant community in Fairfax. Like we have Central Americans who are working at all the restaurants, all the jobs, and we see them, but we don't see them fully. And so I really feel they're invisible. And what I'd like to do is work against that and all the issues that come from not being seen. You know, when we talk about intersectionality, I mean, it's pretty intense for an immigrant woman, you know, from Guatemala, whose first language is not even Spanish, right? So she's got like multiple layers. And because I work in that community, I mean, as I said, my brain's a little bit fuzzy, but I'm thinking, you know, we don't know what their housing is. We don't know about their healthcare. I also work at a hospital where I see the kind of healthcare they get. And I don't know, I envision something where our community as Fairfax supports their well-being. It's unclear how, but I want to pay attention to that. What I wrote is language, housing, healthcare, education, parenting. I mean, when you talk about an immigrant woman who is doing a Zoom class for her child, like, you know, I want to be able, as a community, to support that mom, you know, whatever that looks like. The most important thing is to ask what they need, you know, but bring their voices in.
Thank you. Okay, Emma.
I think on the things that I thought were urgent.
Oops, sorry to interrupt you. It's a little hard to hear you.
Sorry, I think the things that I put for most urgent or is I feel like we are here because of the incredible activism of so many Black activists that risked their lives and their safety to call attention to something that would raise everybody up. And so I do feel like there's an urgency in responding to that directly, and putting that central to the work here, because this is the nationwide movement that brought us here, right? I also think in that topic, and again, this uplifts everybody, is discussing access. When I'm talking to incredible people in Marin City, what I'm hearing a lot is the frustration of people maybe being willing to donate money or put their kids in a few diverse classes or put a Facebook post, but not allowing access into communities, not allowing shifts in power, not allowing access to the communities and the resources. And that would lead to the other thing that I think is really important, because a lot of people talk about diversity and inclusion. And there's a big difference between anti-racism and diversity and inclusion. And I think that diversifying before you have anti-racism can actually be damaging. Yeah. Inviting people into a not anti-racist community can be harmful. So diversifying without having an understanding of anti-racism can bring people into and invite people into a community where they're going to experience constant microaggressions and constant closed doors and a constant sense of an unhealthy environment. And so I think it's extremely important that we as a group educate ourselves on the difference between anti-racism work and not think that it ends at diversifying, because we see in diverse communities a ton of racism and a ton of microaggressions and a ton of aggressive forms of racism. And so I think having and not forgetting and not getting the issue of Black safety, letting that get lost, really focusing on that, focusing on access, because we're the most segregated community, and understanding also, like, my East Bay Muslim community is predominantly Black, and they see Marin County as like another world. It's not even on the map, right? And so making our town more accessible, and focusing heavily at the same time of making it accessible as an anti-racist community. So it's not accessible and then people experience a ton of aggression and microaggressions.
Thank you. Okay, Alexandra.
So I put a star next to 3 words: acknowledgement, education, and access. And I think I've heard a couple of times in this meeting about microaggressions and people who think that Marin County, specifically Fairfax, isn't racist, and that we don't have racism. So I think working towards general acknowledgement of the fact that it exists and it's not really up for debate, I think would be really useful. And then education and access, I think, kind of go hand in hand a little bit. So simply by teaching our students about different cultures and about different holidays and about the way we celebrate maybe the same holiday but in different ways. And creating this atmosphere where those students of color can celebrate their culture and be proud of who they are without having to hide it or tone it down, and be proud of those differences. And then access, I think programs like for mostly youth, just because I think that's like, I think naturally children don't always, I don't think children are born racist. I think that they have minds that are completely open, and it's kind of the way that they're shaped as they grow. And so like having programs where low income students or students of color can get on a mountain bike and learn to ride and be a part of things that is a part of the Fairfax community. But quite frankly, like, biking is a white thing to do. So just real quickly, like, I've noticed that if I go out on my bike just casually, no biker will even acknowledge me because to them, I'm that like, I was born in Guatemala, like that's how they see me, as someone less than. But when I put on all the like gear and I bring out my bike and I like really go for a ride and I'm wearing my sunglasses and everything, then they smile at me, because then like all of a sudden I look like them a little bit more. So that's why I think it's super important to like have programs and allow everyone to be a part of the culture here.
Thank you.
I'll go next.
Okay.
Again, I talked too much, but I'll try to stick to 3. So I think we seriously need to address racism in education in Marin and in Fairfax specifically. I've spoken with teachers who tell me that their students are so racist, they don't even know what racism is. So I think that we almost have to go back to the beginning and start talking about how this all occurred and how we got to where we are, and helping people, specifically kids, understand that, hoping that it'll elevate to their parents. I've heard a lot of people talk about microaggressions. I've actually never experienced a microaggression in Marin. I've experienced macroaggressions. I've been called colored. Like I said earlier, I had a crow put on my doorstep, and I think it's because I am the uppity Negro. And I think that people need to get on a level playing field by understanding where everyone's coming from, and that we're all human beings first and foremost. And race is a construct based on where our ancestors grew up and the weather. It's fake. I also think that there's a need to create more affordable housing in Marin. I believe someone said it here earlier. Marin is an island unto itself in the Bay Area. We don't have BART. We don't have an easy way for folks to get out here from other parts of the Bay Area. And, you know, in my 2.5 years here, I really haven't seen the town council reach out much to San Francisco or the East Bay and to try to share knowledge. And I feel like affordable housing, we can decrease some of the NIMBYism, maybe increase the diversity, but more importantly, just get the conversation started. Because, I mean, it's hard being an African-American in Marin, having moved from the city and having all of your friends laugh in your face every day and tell you that you made the worst decision of your life. And then you get home that day and there's a crow on your doorstep. There's a lot of talking that needs to happen here, and a lot of transparency that needs to happen here. I just feel that there are a number of people in Fairfax who do not understand what racism is. Period. End of story. And I'm not saying that. They've told me that. And they want to understand how they're being racist. So I think that education is definitely a key. And I don't want to say that our generations are lost, but I feel that way, frankly. I think that we need to teach our children well and teach them with literature that helps them understand how we got to where we are in this country, and then how we got to where we are in Marin, because kids don't know that story. And until they know the true narrative of the history of this country, nothing's going to change.
Thank you.
So,
I think she's.
Yeah, I'm unmuting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that come to mind is just like this sort of ignorance about and hostility towards diversity or outsiders. It's really huge here. Like, it's amazing. I've even heard people say, well, I don't want to have affordable housing, or I don't want to let people of color move here because they wouldn't be comfortable here. Like, what's going to make them uncomfortable, and what are you going to do about it? There's also, I feel like at the same time, there's sort of like a little bit of cultural appropriation or imperialism. Like, I want to fetishize other cultures and other religions as a white person, but I don't really want those people living in my neighborhood per se. And then I think as white people, especially people who are white liberals, we kind of think we know everything, and we're like so smart and we're so wonderful that we're actually kind of stuck there without being able to move to, oh no, I don't, oh my God. So that's another issue. So those are the interpersonal issues. And then structural, I mean, I say lack of affordable housing for people who work here and many who live here, and just general access to resources in our community. So many people have said this better about the immigrant community that is invisible here, or what have you. I think it's strange to be here and be have so many people who will tell me, especially white people, they want to work on anti-racism, and yet I keep saying, but then why is it such an incredibly white community? Is it an economic issue? Is it also the culture? I think it's all of these things. So really needing to delve into that. And I think during the pandemic, the other thing that really struck me is how we hog resources here. So how the open space was blocked off for people who weren't from the community, which meant, I mean, I hear people in the canal say how sad they are that they don't have access to open space. And then we had COVID and they really didn't have access to open space. And here in Fairfax, we could just walk out on the trails. So that's something I feel strongly about too. So I don't know, that's a few things. It's like, how do we make this a more welcoming place? It's partially economics, but it's beyond that.
That was amazing timing. Were you finished, or are you good? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, next person. Step up, step up.
Okay. I can go. I mean, everyone has spoken and my words are up. I'm not going to make full sentences today. It's been a long day and a long week. And most of what I wrote down has already been said. I think Serena actually said everything I was going to say to a T. And I think that just going back to my why I applied to be on this committee was the listening sessions and listening to people's experiences, and then hearing afterwards people that I know that listen to those still not understanding how racist this town is. And they heard it, like they heard it with their ears. And that's why I think we desperately need community education behind that, because it baffles me, completely baffles me. And then I think that for me, changing our education system, starting from the very, very, very littles, and really creating an anti-racist education system from the bottom up is something that is one of my goals. So that's me, way under 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's actually really good to note areas of parallel, right? If you want to, when we're in person, you can move Post-its. You can actually do it on a Jamboard too, but I don't want to get too complicated tonight. But it's important to note areas of overlap, because that'll actually really help inform, what are your priorities for the work? You won't be able to do it all at once, and you're going to have to, sort out priorities. So it's important to note that. Okay, next person.
I'll go next, but before I do, I did want to do a time check, Lisa. Yeah. So it's 9:20.
Yep, I've been watching the clock.
Okay. So we'll need to probably make some adjustments if we want to stay on track for a 10 o'clock wrap up. But we can talk about that once we finish this. So my first one was, lack of self-awareness in people, primarily white people, seeing their role and responsibility in, fixing and moving the needle and creating equity. And then, so that's really where I see the primary opportunity, because once you broaden that awareness, then you kind of break down that barrier, right? And people won't feel threatened, and the fear will be lessened about all these other opportunities. And when I heard Amal and Serena, I tend to think of things at when I've been thinking about all summer long, Res J, the work, I think of it in programs. So a lot of you have been talking about what I see is community education and community engagement. And there's so many ideas that I know we all have related to that. And there's already been some really good sessions that have been held over the last few months. And I just think there's so much value in that, in terms of helping people understand through others' experience, through their own experience, and getting vulnerable and sharing. And that's how we're gonna do it. Or one way we're gonna do it. And also, absolutely, on the education front too. I mean, there's just so many things that we can do, from, hosting panels and, documentaries and partnering with the schools. We definitely have an equity issue with our schools. There's no question about it. I know a lot of us have relationships with the schools, so I'm happy to focus on that. I also think, if we're going to build out programs, we need, as much as we can, they should be focused on data. And so I would very much like us to do a survey. And so I'd like us to talk about that at the retreat, and, what is happening in Fairfax, and what does the community think, feel, want. So yeah, I mean, that would be my preference, but I would love to hear from all of you related to that. And I would like to understand what's really happening related to police practice on that as well. So I would leave my comments there.
Okay, thank you. Daria, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm sort of all over the place here, and everybody has made so many great comments, a lot of what I had listed here. So I do want to address, I run into white people all the time who do not get white privilege here in this community. They don't have an understanding, and they deny that they have any kind of privilege at all, because they all feel like they work their asses off to get where they are, but they just don't get it. And I found that to be just mind-blowing. I think it's important. Access is critically important. I think we need to understand historical trauma and how it comes to bear on our current situation and relationships. I feel strongly about revisioning policing and how the community and police work together. Allocation of resources in the community, a lot more police community interaction. Let's see, what else do I have here? Bias, of course. I mean, there's implicit and explicit bias everywhere. So as a construct, I think that really needs to be examined. Let's see here. I think we need to pay attention to what goes on in police hiring and screening, particularly for trauma, and how we take care of our police as well in addressing those issues, because they do influence how they respond to you or me or others. Education and training in trauma-informed police responses. Let's see what else here. Of course, generally increased awareness about these issues. Housing is a terrible problem. Gender inclusiveness, I think, is a big issue. And I fully agree that we have some serious problems in our schools with a very hierarchical, patriarchal power and control sort of domination in how our districts are run, particularly Ross Valley. I think that's really damaging. And our teachers, I think, are suffering, and certainly our children are. Yeah, I think that's probably enough for now. Oh, I also think it would be great for us to have conversations with other committees in the county like ours, and that we should have make sure that there is a relationship, and that we are feeling that we're communicating and sharing ideas and joining together in this work with others who are doing it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I just respond to that really quickly?
Can we, I know, I knew you'd want to.
Yeah, I apologize for that. It sort of slipped out.
It's all good. Let's get, I'm trying to get through the all share so that we have opportunity for dialogue. I've been watching the clock. So I know we're a little behind schedule here, but I also don't want to cut people off. All right, so next person. I think we have 3 people who haven't gone. Am I counting right? Okay, Veronica, I'll set the timer.
Sorry, it sure sounds like you've done some research. I'm excited to be on this committee with you. I definitely have a little, I imagine a few of us have a feeling of this, but this sense of like anxiousness around how there's this narrative that if you're involved with like town sanctioned racial justice work, that it just moves really slowly, and that it can kind of be like a pacification of actual policy change. And so I really hope to orient toward like strong actions in policy, in addition to the community building, relationship building, and development of our group, really wanting to like that urgency that has been spoken to feels very important that we acknowledge it. We can't let anybody else be impacted by racism in our community, and potentially dangerously impacted. So the 3 strong points of focus that I think I'd love for us to delve into sooner than later are definitely incorporating public safety alternatives around mental health and substance abuse crises that are very common for police to be getting called for in Fairfax. So to have, like San Francisco is doing, opportunities to have unarmed responses to many of the calls that are made. And in that vein, really excited about the potential of a townwide survey so that we can get data rather than just the anecdotes, though I believe those are important and valuable. I think some people aren't able to be hearing them. And so to give hard data in terms of a survey that the town can fill out around what policing alternatives would you feel safe with still? What would safe policing for all
look like, not just the white folks in our community. Knowing that there are still on the deeds and homes statements around Black folks not being able to own those homes is very troubling. And so I'd love to put forth an effort to make it a law in Fairfax that we have to strike that out, even though it'll still be on the deeds, to just make sure that it's acknowledged that that was entirely racist and inappropriate. And then in that vein, maybe to establish some type of reparation effort where we, or an affirmative action around being able to say that a certain percentage of our homes have to be owned by Black folks to make up for the redlining that has happened in Marin County for decades.
Thank you. I saw some snaps. All right. I think we have 2 left.
I can go.
Sophia, Sophia, then Bruce, and then we have one more, correct?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sophia. Oh, Bruce.
I do want to be mindful of time. Yeah.
Bruce, Sophia's gonna go, and then I'll have you go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're hearing everything. Sophia's gonna go, and then we'll have you go.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Sophia.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I can contribute to already what everyone said. I think everyone's pretty much touched on most of the stuff. I guess a few of the things that I definitely resonated with thinking are important things for this committee to address is policing, obviously. Despite there not being a lot of Black residents in Fairfax, there are some, including myself, and there is still a sense of fear in the community. And I don't think that that fear between the Black community and police officers is ever going to go away, at least not anytime soon. But at the moment, I don't see the Fairfax police going out of their way to try and minimize that fear as much as possible at the moment. I think there's a sense of complacency within minorities, feeling fearful in this community. I also think that's something else important for us to do is potentially find ways to remember the groups that were here before us, including the Coast Miwok, and potentially having a memorial of some place for them, whether that's planting a tree that was native here before European colonizers came with foreign plants that destroyed a lot of the natural ecosystem. That's just one example, obviously, but acknowledging the fact that most of us weren't the first people here, and yeah.
Did you finish your thought?
Yeah, I heard the timer.
Okay, I just want to make sure you get to finish your thought.
No, that's okay. I think I'm done.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Bruce. And then I believe Laylee, you're next. Okay.
I can't add very much to all that's been said, and it's quite a range of some very big thoughts. I wanted to add that one of the experiences that I've had here is, and Liesl is very familiar with this, the attempt to get Victory Village approved, which is a housing that's opening at this point, but it's for elderly people and very low income. And that was an incredible opportunity. It was actually given to us by the church that closed. And so we had this awesome opportunity to do this, and it fit right in with our general plan. But it took really overall 5 years, depending on how you count it, of discussion in the town to finally decide to approve it. And that was pretty shocking. And so how that kind of ended up, at least from my point of view, and I really want to thank Liesl for being one of the leaders in what I think really brought this to a conclusion, was organizing in the community and in a very positive way. And Liesl maybe could speak to this if I'm not getting it right, but that the message was that we're a caring community, and that's why we should, that message that we in Fairfax are welcoming and caring, aren't we? And that seemed to turn the corner from so many endless meetings, scores of meetings in which people were talking about, well, they would be okay with it if it could be restricted to only Fairfax residents or one thing or another. And that really, it just turned the corner in kind of putting forth to the community that, look, this is how we see ourselves, right? And so this is clearly what we should do given how we see ourselves. And so I just, I'm not being very coherent here, but just trying to put forth something to the community about how we have a self-image of ourselves in Fairfax, or people in Fairfax have a really amazing image of this town as being the greatest town in the world. And sometimes that almost can lead to its opposite, in that it's like, well, anybody else from outside of town can't be the greatest people in the world because we're the greatest people in the world. And so it just, trying to get past that, trying to reach out to the community in a positive way that sort of tries to bring in the good feelings that the community has about itself already, that it is a community in a way that many other people aren't, and many other places aren't. Not for everybody, but it really, this town has a self-image, and it's very much a reality in many ways that this town is a true community and is very connected with each other. So trying to build on that to say, well, why don't we do things to be more of a community, more inclusive? I'm not sure if that was very coherent.
Okay.
But
just a brainstorm, it's all good. Thank you.
And I just, as far as the timekeeping, as we finish this up, I think we are going to need to go to the public comment, because we need to hear that before the meeting is done. So just a reminder on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think let's let Laylee finish, and then I can make a comment about the just agenda process, next steps. Thank you.
Well, I will be extremely brief. I mean, I think everybody, as other members have echoed, I think so many great ideas have been laid out. So I'm just going to amplify a couple of things that some of you have already said, which is, I think obviously there are so many issues of great importance that we would want to ideally address, but I really do think that getting in and talking about the racism that exists in our community as a threshold matter is probably the most important, and will ultimately serve as a portal to so many of these other issues that are obviously connected. Sort of a la Audre Lorde's quote, So I'm just going to leave it at that. But, I really appreciate what some of you have said. Serena, I thought you were so on point. I think raising awareness around immigration and representation among the people in power, it's so powerful. I've seen what it means to sit in court and have a defendant see a judge who looks like them and what that means, in terms of their perception of how they might be treated. And I can only imagine what it's like to be a student, and seeing teachers and administrators who look like you, and the incredible effect that can have on a person and their sense of their own possibilities. Anyway, so I will close with that so we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I say one quick thing? Just in the interest of paralleling how many things are mentioned, I also had wanted to say immigration awareness and awareness around documented, undocumented, and protection and understanding, just so that you parallel how many times things were mentioned.
Thank you. So this is
okay.
No, go ahead.
Just a really quick one is when people were talking about the survey, and I was listening to Griselda talk about a survey. I don't think it should just be of residents. I think we should survey people who work here too. So just to put that on the table, who might want to live here.
Thank you. So just a couple quick notes in the interest of time. So time is a partnership. Time is a partnership between me as your facilitator, kind of being thoughtful about the flow and estimated timelines of the agenda, but also about you as a Res J, kind of calling out what your needs are for time, and being mindful of time constraints. So, as we move through the work together and we build more trust, I will probably end your time when we have a timed moment of commentary to ensure that we keep on track with our agenda. But it is definitely a partnership with me giving you mindful reminders, but you also being really mindful of the time, because we want to hear from everybody, but we also need to be moving through our agenda. So just a quick note on that. In terms of moving forward, this is where I would facilitate a decision being made, but I am not part of I don't feel like that is a role appropriate to me as a facilitator. In terms of making a decision, I see your hand, Stephanie, making a decision about where we head with the agenda. So we're past 9:30 now. Some of the sections for the dialogue and conversation took longer than estimated, and we have a couple pieces remaining. So one of the hopes was that we were going to agenda item D, form a subcommittee tonight, and also take into consideration any other action steps that needed to happen. We were not able to complete a brainstorming process in terms of kind of synthesizing all of the information tonight. So just want to make note of that. And we have public comment and closing the meeting left on our agenda. So recommendations, considerations for how we move forward. Again, just being very mindful of time. And I'll call on Stephanie first because I saw her hand.
So a question about the synthesizing, you mean that brainstorming we just had, that collection of input from everybody?
Yeah, where we would have time to then talk. Our intention was to distill down some of the key elements if we wanted to take action tonight, but we weren't necessarily going to take action right now. It was a way to surface some of the issues.
Okay, I think we could probably capture it and then, take it to our next meeting and retreat and work it from there. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So D, I don't think will take very long if we're just capturing a show of hands of who's interested, because we're not going to form the committee tonight.
Okay, so let's go one at a time. And I need to know, Garrett, do we need to do a motion for each section since it was a committee approved agenda from the beginning?
No, You don't, I mean, the agenda was more of a guide,
Yeah.
all your topics.
Yeah, I just want to
So,
make sure.
yeah, so I think you're fine.
Okay, so I would like to get consensus though, just in terms of an equitable process here, Stephanie. So can we get consensus for item C, ResJ development, that we would hold the rest of the brainstorming until our retreat, which will likely come before the next meeting, I'm guessing. And then we will definitely, for the community listening to know, and for all of you to know, we will definitely distill the information and come up with critical action steps, just not tonight. So if I could just see thumbs up as our consensus for this.
Perhaps I'm in the dark on this one, but you guys keep referring to a retreat.
Yeah,
I've
we were
heard
going to
nothing about a retreat.
No, you haven't.
Oh,
we're going to talk
okay,
about
great.
that.
So I didn't like brain fart.
Not at all. No, you did not. We'll talk about that at the end.
Okay.
Okay. And then Stephanie, how what's your recommendation to move forward for D?
So for D, the subcommittee on exploration of alternative police practice, that it is a maximum of 6 committee members, not including youth members. And so we wanted to get an understand, and knowing Ziana is not here, we're not going to, form the subcommittee tonight, but we wanted to get a show of hands tonight to get an understanding of how many people are interested in being, because if there's more than 6, then we're going to need to determine a process. And that will obviously be a democratic one. If it's 6 or under, it'll make things a lot easier for us. So
I'm counting 4, and then we have one member who had an interest, is not with us tonight, and she wanted me to make note of that.
Okay, Anne, could you just capture, please, if you're still with us, who's interested? I'm seeing Patrice,
Daria, Veronica, sorry, and Alexandra.
And Laylee.
Laylee?
Oh, that's why you have to make sure to check me. I'm sorry, I did not see your hand. Thank you.
Sorry. I don't want to needlessly complicate the numbers. So, but.
So is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Well, is that, but what I think we have, was Ziana interested as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she wanted me to make sure to say that.
Yeah.
So that's 6 then, right?
Yep.
1, 2.
Actually, I count 7. If you didn't have, you have Bruce's hand up.
So Anne, can you read back the names?
Oh, you have to unmute yourself, Anne.
Sorry. I have Patrice, Veronica, Alexandria, Laylee, Daria, and the gal who's not here.
And Bruce.
And Bruce.
Ziana and Bruce. So
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's 7. That's 7.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll need to circle back with a process.
Process. And one of the things from our perspective, you might want to consider having at least one council member on that subcommittee.
Well, Bruce raised his hand.
Right. So, but I was saying then all of a sudden, out of the 6, one's a council member, so then you really have 5. But I guess you only had 6. So it's all the same. Never mind.
Yeah, is that because Bruce is a council member, does he count as one of the 6? Or can we move forward with who we are plus Bruce?
Yeah, won't that be a quorum if he's?
Yes, it would be a quorum because he's on this committee. So you have 13 voting members and Bruce is a voting member. So that's why you only could have 6 for your subcommittee.
Okay, that's what I thought. So we have to have 6, including a council member, just to be clear. Okay, and so all 7 people who are interested, we have to have a council member, so that leaves, is there anybody who is not interested in being on it, just in terms of, I mean, if we move forward with the process, every single person is still interested. So I just want to, if somebody does not want to move forward in that process, we should decide that now before tabling it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I think we're good for now.
Can I ask what tabling it means? And just to,
It doesn't mean indefinitely. It means next time we convene, we'll talk about standing it up. Are you in agreement with that, Bruce?
Yeah, I think it's we should continue it to the next time that we get together, whether that's in a meeting or in a retreat.
And that members of it would be decided through a democratic process since there's more than 6 interested. All right. So we're good to move on?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so now we have an opportunity for public comment. Thank you for your patience. I see 15 members of the public. Could you please raise your hand if you would like to speak?
Your virtual hand. We
Yeah,
have one.
So you have one, well, two. Okay. So with that, and Stephanie, how much time do the speakers have?
Well, if it's 2, I think 3 minutes is perfectly fine.
Okay. I don't have a timer behind me, so I'll just have to keep track and let them know.
On my phone.
I have
Okay.
Okay, you got it, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we'll start with Ricky A. I think you just...
I'm here. This is Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Hi. I just wanted to say, first of all, congratulations and thank you all for joining this committee. It's been very eye-opening. I've heard most of you speak at council meetings and then in your interview processes, and I've learned so much already just hearing all of many perspectives that you've had to share, and you all seem like really, really fantastic people that are really committed to this, and I'm really excited this coming about in the town. And one thing that I would say, because I've had a lot of different conversations, people have asked me, what is this Res J thing and what's going on? And there's been some concern because you've gotten some budget allotment already. And one thing that might be helpful for the community at large is to maybe come up with something, I don't know, like a vision statement or a mission statement or some little kind of synopsis. There's been so much depth and so many layers to the things that you've all been talking about and what the work you want to do and the changes that you want to bring about and the things that you want to look at. And so just in terms of helping the broader community understand, so that's just a thought that I had. And I just wanted to do this since I was inspired, since somewhere in the presentation tonight, there was an Audre Lorde quote. I wanted to share a very short one that I've always really liked. And she says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. Thank you all.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, next is Megan.
Hi. I also just wanted to thank you all for your work. I'm trying to do some work within the schools, so I was kind of excited to hear some of that connection, and I'd be excited to kind of collaborate on that. And just as an outsider, kind of looking at the process observation would be that it seems like, as far as timing, some people are really observing the timing, and then others are not. And I would especially maybe call attention to people that are already on another platform, like on the town council, to be especially aware of their timing and not going over that. I think that would be an important thing to just be aware of. Thank you.
Okay, next person is Brandon Johnson.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. This is going to be super short. I just wanted to say that this is almost makes me cry seeing all of you here, all of these beautiful, strong faces that are putting in the work. I've seen a lot of you at work, and I know that this group, when I first saw the list, I was like, yes, this group is going to make some fantastic change. And yeah, it's just really inspiring to see you all. I could cry just from you know, from hearing you all, you know, bringing forth the issues. And I know that you guys are all going to be fantastic. So it's just really cool to see all you folks together in Fairfax. This is historic. So I hope you all know that, and rooting for you all.
Thanks so much.
Let's see, any other hands or speakers? Oh, Joe McGeary. Okay. Oops. There you go. Oh, shoot. Oops. Sorry. Oop. My bad. Joe, are you there?
We go. Yeah, there
Sorry.
we go. Thank you. Yeah, just echoing a lot the gratitude for seeing you all here, ready to do the work, and just one little piece that is that invisible piece of a lot of our essential workers here in town. And you know, when we opened up the application process, we made sure to include those who work in town. And so I was glad to hear it voiced about the survey. But if we could make that a conscious effort throughout everything, that we're being aware of including the voices of those who work in town and who can't afford to live in town. It's a critical piece. They're the backbone of the economy of the town, and to further marginalize them by not having them being part of the process of the committee that's here to help them. Yeah, I just wanted to call that out, but thank you all for all the wonderful work you're doing and are going to do. So thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Sorry, unmuted myself. Okay, any other speakers? Star 9 or raise your virtual hand. Okay, I do not see any other speakers.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment. That's what we formally do. We state that. Thank you.
I have one thing to say or a comment is when we put together the meeting time for this group, not everyone can make it. So I don't know how that wants to be handled, but I just thought I'd bring it up since I took roll call.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll move into some of our closing items. And one of them is a doodle poll for the next meeting to determine, it'll have to go by majority vote on the doodle poll. The reality of a consensus on a scheduling matter is next to impossible. So our next step will be to send out doodle poll times. Do you want to add anything, Bruce or Stephanie?
No, but
I'd like to add something. So the invite I received tonight said 7 to 8. I'm a self-employed person, so I plan meetings around my calendar. And so I would just hope that we could be a little more accurate in our timing, or say maybe longer, so that I can block that out on my calendar, because this went well beyond what I planned. And so I've missed some things this evening.
thank you so much for that feedback. I think that's a Zoom default setting. Was it from the Zoom invite?
It was from the Zoom invite. Yeah, it was from the one that we just received. I think it was yesterday or something.
So it was scheduled 7 to 9 and we did go over. So we will be, I did not want to cut people off in the comments, but we'll be much more cognizant for the next meeting to ensure that we can end on time with the exception.
And you know, I'm fine if it's 7 to 10. I just would love to know that going in.
No, it's a super important point. I appreciate you bringing it up. I think we can stick to a time with some norms around the conversation timing, but then also we'd have to accept, you know, with the exception of public comment, because that's unpredictable.
Absolutely. And I understand that. I'm just saying that if we could kind of bring it into our box as much as we're capable of doing, that would be really helpful for those of us who actually work at night.
Yeah, I had to yell at my kid a couple times. So I'm like,
yeah.
I muted myself and yelled, I'm not done yet. So
oh, I've had dogs biting, yipping at my ankles.
All right. Well,
you know, it would just be helpful. It would be helpful if we could be a little more accurate in what we're doing.
We will for sure do that next time. Okay, a couple of things left to do. So we're going to have a process observation report out. Again, this is a collaborative process for meeting agenda development, not a Lisa Jimenez process. So we'll take, this is just kind of bucket list of agenda items for next time. No decisions will be made. I will get together with one council member at least, if not two, to plan the next agenda. And if we can have a member from the ResJ participate with us, I would love that. So if that's possible, given our numbers. And then we will have appreciation and we will be done for the evening, our very first meeting. So
I appreciate you all. I really have to go to the bathroom. Is that like not political? But I mean, this has been 3 hours.
Yeah.
No break. My body doesn't function.
Please feel free. Please feel free. Veronica, do you want to take us in to process observation?
Yeah, I wonder if I can get that slide up of what we were agreeing to, of the norms, so that I can use.
Yeah, I'm trying to give Garrett the perfect slide 11. It's slide 11.
And for the sake of being clear around what I'm doing, am I sharing just from my observation how we stuck to these norms?
Exactly. For tonight, that's all we're doing. When we have a retreat, we'll agree on a report out process. But for tonight, we keep it simple.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Share the airtime. I think Megan called in and voiced her reflection, and I agree that there were some of us who were mindful of being swift, and some of us who were also extended most of the times that we were speaking beyond the time limit. So just conscious of that, to be respectful of each other. Step up and step back. I feel like we modeled that very well. Practice constructivist listening. There wasn't, like defensiveness or reactivity to what people were saying or pointing fingers. I felt like there was a lot of constructive visioning and dreaming that we did. And I didn't hear any assumptions made about our members. So I would say that there weren't assumptions. I don't know that there were necessarily questions to evade those assumptions. So maybe that's something we can get a little more brave with. And practicing humble inquiry. Yeah, how did we do on that, everybody? That one's hard for me to speak to.
I'm gonna actually have you call it from your perspective as process observer, because people will have a time to observe on that norm. How do you think we did?
I was really amazed at the way that we shared, particularly in the open dialogue, around the points that we wanted to focus on and our whys,
that in crew is really inspiring. Yeah.
All right. Can we give our very first Res J process observer some snaps, y'all? All right, we can get rid of that screen. Perfect. I want to see all these beautiful faces. All right. That I know I'm a nerd, okay, and the process observation for me is such an important part of meetings to just hold the equitable space. And so I told somebody I was in the closet about being a nerd, and they laughed at me and said, "Yeah, you're so not, Lisa. What are you talking about?" I'm very nerdy about process observation. So thank you for bearing with me at this late hour. So before we jump into appreciations, any burning items for our next agenda? This is your opportunity, being very super mindful of our time frame right now. And we'll have a collaborative process. We'll have multiple folks. We'll send out an agenda for you to review and also give input. So this is not your last time. This is just, at the end of this meeting, what are your thoughts for the next meeting? And we'll just popcorn. So popcorn is kind of like shout out, just, one-off ideas. That's the idea of popcorn.
Forming the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Prioritizing.
Yeah.
Things we can do in the short term.
As facilitator, I have one, which is deciding on understanding and deciding terminology, meaning African American, Black, BIPOC, Latinx, and creating some norms around that.
Identifying where we need outside guidance.
Any last thoughts? Okay. Has the Brown Act been, I don't want to cover Brown Act right now at this late hour, but has it been covered just regarding email communication? Stephanie, I don't remember.
Sent out a 20-minute little training video on it.
Okay, perfect. So you can give ideas over email, but we can't be emailing back and forth with multiple people for discussion. So if you have other agenda item ideas, please feel free to email them. So congratulations. You actually did it after months and months of waiting and planning and phone calls and emails. And oh my gosh, like, when is this going to happen? And then it had to be postponed because of what? This is 2020, y'all. So I'm happy to bring you to the close of your very first Res J. And in true Lisa fashion, I would, but instead of a sentence, I'm going to ask everybody to just share one word in a very quick whip around of appreciation to close us out.
Gratitude.
Warmth.
Unity.
Recognition.
Honored.
Progress.
Hopeful.
Courage.
Grateful.
Eager.
Inspired.
Thank you so much. My word is also inspired, and I just feel the most incredible privilege. I will share quickly what an emotional night this is for me. It is a privilege to carry you in the journey of your stories. Words cannot do justice to the privilege I feel to carry your stories forward, to transform Fairfax. And as a person who's experienced many of the things you all spoke about tonight, this has been much to Brandon's sentiment of I leave this meeting teary-eyed, inspired, fulfilled, and in awe of all of you for taking up this torch. And I can only hope that I do your stories and the work ahead justice in my facilitation of this group. So thank you so much, everybody, for everything and for your work tonight.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.